Money Magicians. How are you? Welcome to yet another Money Magic podcast. My guest today is Brooke, and Brooke is someone that talks about abuse in relationships, and she helps women heal from abuse in relationships. So obviously, she told me about the work that she does with financial abuse, and I thought, wow. Do you guys know that after 100 episodes, we still have never ever talked about financial abuse on this podcast? So today is a wonderful opportunity to learn from someone that actually deals with that and to learn how we identify it, how to get out of that situation, all of that good stuff. So if you've just joined, I'm your host for the show. My name is Vangile, and I help mainly women of color heal ancestral money traumas so they can fall in love with their bank accounts, increase income, and live their best lives. And now over to Brooke. Hi, Brooke. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I think it's going to obviously lead us into more, but I think it's such a powerful topic that women need to be aware of because, if we're in these type of dynamics where we are in abusive relationships or being controlled or manipulated, this can be a big dynamic of it as well. So there's just so many facets and components to it. So thanks for having me here for this conversation.
Yeah, I was actually shocked when I spoke to you to realize that I have never covered financial abuse on this podcast. I very rarely talk about it, but I also think that we talk about the things that we have experienced, right? And things that we become, I don't want to say experts in, but that's really it. And so I was like, wow, this is such a critical topic for women. Can you please tell us what led you to focus on helping women who are healing from abusive relationships?
Yeah, of course. So obviously my story and my journey took me here because I was abused. It really began honestly in childhood. I had a very narcissistic, controlling father, and I was raised in a cult. So this cult was also very, patriarchy. It was controlling. It was, you have to listen to this doctrine or else you're shunned, abandoned, or completely outcast of the community. So it was this dynamic of also recognizing I was having religious abuse, narcissistic abuse at home, a controlling, manipulative father, and then moving into that same dynamic as I grew older. Of course, I went and found and repeated the pattern, a partner that was the same. So, and I didn't realize that, right? Because it was all I had ever known. I didn't know anything different. So I was experiencing what was familiar, what was comfortable for me. Even though it wasn't the best thing for me, it was what was comfortable for my system because that's what I was used to, right? And I always tell people that because it's like, even though we don't realize it, our nervous system will choose a familiar hell over something that is like not known. So even though, this was not obviously my desire, this is kind of what I was existing in, I stayed in that relationship for 17 years. Not realizing that in that relationship, not only was I being abused, but there was also this dynamic of um, this thing of chipping away my self-esteem, my power, my ability to make decisions. And along came with that was the financial abuse, right? It was, even though we had money wasn't a plenty. It was the story of the why are you spending that? How dare you, right? Like even after that, it was like I had to ask for permission. So there was that control dynamic there too. And then it started to become even more controlling, like I'm going to handle all the finances. You're not going to know about the finances. You're not going to be able to have access to the finances. So these dynamics started to come into play where it was like, I didn't even realize I was being controlled, right? But then after leaving the relationship, I looked back and I recognized that it was why my relationship to money had become the way it had become. Because I was also afraid, oh, it's going to be taken away from me. Oh, it's bad to spend money on myself. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble if I spend money on myself, right? Because it was like this fear of what do I do if I spend money? Something bad's going to happen. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get yelled at. We're going to get in a fight. And so now it's funny, is like, as I began to heal when I left that relationship, I started to see myself and witness and be like, oh, I'm going shopping and I'm feeling guilty buying this thing for myself because there's this part of me that still believes I'm going to get in trouble. It's bad that I'm buying this thing. Those type of things. So you don't realize like how much it really is imprinted on you and how it does cause this trauma because of what it, of the outcome. You're afraid of the outcome. And so your nervous system is like, oh my gosh, we don't want that to happen again.
Wow.
It's a lot. I know, I thought, like, we'll just take a quick break here.
It makes me like, I feel like in a way it's like part of my upbringing, but not with the adults. I feel like as a child, like so much of my life, don't spend money on that, don't do this, but that came from us not having enough in my teens, not as a child, but like when I got into my teens, things changed and that happened. So it's almost like as a grown woman, you're being treated like a child.
Yes, exactly. And I felt that dynamic, which is interesting because as a child growing up, my parents didn't have money when I was younger, but then as a teen, I had anything I wanted. But I also, if I didn't conform to what my father wanted me to do within the religion or how I was supposed to behave, it was taken away. It was, oh, well, then I'm not going to get you this nicest thing. So you could have gotten this nice thing, but since you were bad, you're going to get the thing that's not as nice. And so it felt like the same type of control dynamic in the relationship and the marriage that was happening for me. And so I was just recognizing that this now, as I've healed and as I've recognized how much narcissistic abuse does to your nervous system, to your body, to your health, to your mental health, like it really takes an overall toll. And you don't realize like how much what they did to you imprinted on you until you kind of start to unravel the pieces and start to see them. And then you're like, oh my gosh, they destroyed any inability for me to make a decision for myself. They destroyed the ability for me to even know how to trust myself, to even know that it was possible to trust myself, because it made me self-doubt. It made me wonder, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if I do this? And then being confused on how to make that decision. And I think that's when you lose yourself. You lose yourself in those relationships. And I always say to myself, I don't know if I ever found myself because I was never allowed to have the freedom to do that as a child. I was never free. I was told who I had to be, what I had to do, how to dress, how to behave. There was no freedom.
I feel I so relate with the trying to figure out who you are, because so much of who I was as a child was considered wrong. So was like beaten out of me, was shouted out of me, screamed out of me, just terrible, everything I was considered terrible, should I say. Like, so I can only imagine what that is like. So before we go deeper into the topic, I think that there are people here listening who may be like, I think I resonate with that, but is it financial abuse? How do you know if you're going through financial abuse? How do you define it?
Are you being controlled? It's simple. You need to just ask yourself, am I being controlled with finances? For a lot of women, so with women that I work with, I'll give you some examples so that women can kind of see that for themselves, right? Some women, they both work, so they both bring an income to the table, but the man also takes the income. And he says, well, I'm going to handle the finances. I'm going to take your income and we're going to put it here. And then he divvies out what they can spend, whatever. He keeps control over the overall finances, right? And some women would be like, oh, well, that's okay. We're in a partnership and it's okay that he does that, right? it comes, and maybe that is, right? So if you're perfectly okay with that and you have no problem with that type of control, then that's your choice. But when the woman is feeling like, I'm not allowed to spend what I want to spend, I'm not allowed to purchase what I'd like to purchase for myself, and this person is controlling that dynamic, even though you bring money to the table, right? Then that is that financial abuse that's happening, because that's making you have a relationship to money that's not healthy, because money is being withheld from you. They're keeping control of money, and now you've had your power taken away, right? Because if you make that money, well, that's yours. You get to decide what you'd like to do with it. And I think a lot of the times, people come into relationships where they have this dynamic because of how patriarch has happened, right? Well, the man is the head and the man is supposed to handle these things and he's the one that's supposed to take the lead or whatnot. Well, when it comes to your autonomy and your decision to make what you would like and what you want to do for yourself, you have to be able to have that. There has to be boundaries, right? They cannot be enmeshed within themselves. Another example is some women they have no idea. They have nothing. The husband gives them a credit card or a debit card, and that's all they get. They have no access to the bank. They have no access to go and get cash. That's the way that the man controls, right? So that's another form of that. So you have like some different dynamics, but you have to be able to sit with yourself and say, okay, how am I being controlled financially? Does this feel like a symbiotic relationship between me and my partner where we both bring what we bring to the table and we have the freedom to overall make decisions, right? Maybe you're not going out and buying a $40,000 car without telling your partner. That's a little different, right? But within reason, right? Like, how open are you able to just make those decisions without that control that is there? Because the minute you feel guilty and the minute you feel afraid, then you have to say, okay, something's not right. Because there should be no fear. There should be no guilt, right? There should be no, oh God, if I do this, what's going to happen? How is it going to be this time? What, am I going to get yelled and screamed at and called names, right? Or, am I going to be hit? Whatever that looks like, you have to decide how much is really happening here that's taking away my control.
Wow, I have so many questions right now swimming in my head. So the first one is, as soon as you described that, it made me think about the tread wife. You know about the tread wife movement, right? For those of you that don't know about the tread wife movement, it stands for traditional wife, where like the man makes all the financial decisions in the relationship. And it's something that has been really, I don't know if I want to say shoved down women's throats, but it's become something of popular culture. It's like you stay home and you do quote unquote feminine duties at the house. You cook, you clean, you just cater to your husband and he looks after you financially. So I've been also watching videos on that where there are older women who are coming on TikTok and social media platforms and saying to younger women, stop this, don't do this, because we've done this. And the impact of that is that we have no retirement savings or investments. If our husbands pass on, we are literally screwed. There's nothing. If our husbands decide to leave us, we have nothing. So if someone is in that dynamic and now they're listening to this, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have investments. I may be going through financial abuse. What is the first thing that they can do for themselves to get out of this dynamic? And do they necessarily have to leave the relationship, or is there a way for them to take back their power but still stay in the relationship? Because I'm imagining some people love their husbands, they have kids, they build families, homes.
Yeah, I think that again, this is where it has to be fair, right? Because and there's nothing wrong with a woman taking on a role and saying, I want to stay home with my children, I want to raise them, right? I mean, we've been doing that for eons of time, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times women have taken that role. It's very, it's in the Bible, right? The woman, quote unquote the role that we've been supposed to play, right? Just as you talked about. But things have shifted, right? Women are also now, coming into this space where they're recognizing, well, wait a second, what happens to me if this partner ends up leaving me, right? And this is what happens, right? When we end up having this divorce, and that was something that happened to me, right? I was a stay-at-home mom. I was able to raise my children because we owned a business that made enough money where we had plenty and I didn't have to work, right? I got that luxury is what I call it. And I wanted that. I desired that for my children. But again, what happened at the end, right? I didn't work, so I didn't have this savings, this retirement, this anything planned for the future, because I thought, oh, well, we're going to be together forever and I'm just going to have this money and it's always going to be here. And that's not advocating for yourself. That's not saying, okay, well, when things do go bad, pre-planning for the future. And I think really luck, favors the prepared, right? So it's always like, okay, if you're seeing this dynamic in your own relationship, one, identify, am I in an abusive relationship? Am I truly happy first? And if not, then I would suggest you going down the path of, okay, I need to find the support system to get me out of this situation that I'm in so that I can start to create my life now. If you're still in a relationship and you love your husband, I would say have a real conversation of, what does this look like for me? If we happen to break up in 10 years and I've stayed home with the kids for all these years and I don't have anything, how am I going to get basically something so I can still have a life, right? And being able to set yourself up financially so you have whatever that takes, right? Obviously, when you divorce, if you're married, you get 50-50 of everything. At least that's the way it is in the States here. So that's always a great piece, if you have something to get 50% of, then you're going to be fine. Everybody, don't worry. Like, I think a lot of women, especially in these abusive relationships, are like, oh my God, I'm not going to have money. I don't know what's going to happen. And they have depended on the man for so long to bring in the money. It's the fear that keeps you stuck in the abuse. That was for me as well. And that's why I like to talk to women about, like, okay, if you're going to, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to begin to start to look big picture. What happens if this happens? How am I going to be taken care of so that I don't have to feel the scarcity, so I don't have to feel the fear of not having the money? Because that is what will always keep you trapped. We hate, the brain hates the unknown. The nervous system hates the unknown. It's going to keep us trapped where we're at. So it's being able to say, you know what? You are going to be okay if you are married and you have something to get. You're going to be okay, right? There's alimony, there's child support, there's, 50% of his 401k or whatever that looks like. There's so many options. And then for the women that don't have that, sometimes it's about starting over. And it can be really tough and really hard, but that's also knowing that you can get the support that you need. There's so much accessible now. So much, with social media and the coaches out there and the therapists and the nonprofits to help you rebuild your life.
I love what you said. And I think, like, one of the things that some of these women are saying is that you can start, the sooner you get out of it, as the younger you are, the sooner you get out of it, the better, because you still have years ahead of you to work, right? So it's better to get out of it at 30 or at 40 than it is to get out of it at 60, So you want to get out of it faster so you still have that energy to build. Oh, that's very, very good advice. So what are some of the biggest challenges, just apart from mindset, that you've seen that people face or maybe even mindset? We talked about the mindset with leaving, but the mindset in healing financial abuse. What are some of the biggest challenges that people face when it comes to healing from the financial abuse itself?
Fear and scarcity. So I'm sure you've talked about scarcity mindset on this podcast, when you're talking all about money, right? Is having that type of mindset where all you see is lack. All you believe is lack. So your subconscious beliefs is, I never have enough, or I'm never gonna have enough. And then the fear of, oh my God, what if I never get what I need, right? And it kind of just keeps you trapped in this like thought pattern, this negative thought loop that happens in your brain where it's like that fear, that scarcity, and that lack continues to perpetuate. And it really doesn't let you get out of that because you're so stuck here. And of course, if you don't have anything, all you have is lack, and all you're seeing is lack, right? It's really hard to say, oh, well, I'm going to believe that I'm abundant. I believe I have all the money I need, right? That's also not going to be believable to the brain because the brain's like, well, no, I'm not seeing it. I have no evidence. Where's my evidence, right? The brain is always looking for evidence. And so it's more about taking these slow, methodical belief systems, right? Because as a hypnotherapist and someone that works with subconscious mind and treats and teaches people how the brain works, it's about taking these slow spaces where you can maybe see, okay, well, I don't have enough right now. Okay, but how can I look at this moment right now in the present moment, how I'm secure and I'm safe and I'm actually stable? Like I got a roof over my head, or, I've got water, I've got food. Like it's about looking at the things that you do have. And that's how you kind of start to shift, right? Well, maybe you aren't in $1 million home with a Lamborghini. Okay. But you can't think that you're going to go from 0 to 100, right? Like that's just not the way it works in this space. So it's about being able to say, okay, well, I look at every moment and I see the abundance in that moment. And you're teaching your brain to see that, to be more present, because the future always makes us anxious. And the brain loves to try to predict the future. It loves to try to figure out the outcome of the future. But the more that you can stay present is where you can kind of change that reality for yourself and that feeling in your body and becoming more stable in yourself. And I always tell people, and in this space, the first key of healing anything from abuse, financial abuse, a scarcity mindset, a lack mindset of not having enough, all of these things, is first becoming stable inside. Inner chaos is out of control. Well, everything outside of you is also going to be out of control and chaotic, right? So first finding the stability and the security within yourself, the slowing down, the healing of that nervous system, of becoming more secure inside. I promise you, once you do that work, you start to feel more secure and things start to shift for you because you're not always allowing the mind to run ahead and fear and scarcity and see more lack. You're just teaching the brain to see, oh, I have abundance right now here in this moment, right? I have abundance right now. I have this water, or, I know it sounds so corny. It sounds so cheesy, right? But it's like literally taking those small things to teach your brain how safe and secure you are right now in this moment. And your nervous system in your body, it's always, you're feeling into that, right? And your mind is always listening. So the more you practice that, the easier it becomes, right? And the more that you start to get in tune with yourself to be able to see, oh, I'm just getting into fear. Like, what am I fearing right now? What is there actually to fear? And then kind of go from there. But I think that piece of it is knowing that you always have the ability to create more. I think sometimes we're like, oh my God, I'm never going to make enough. Or, you always have the ability to create more, and just trusting yourself a little bit more is going to go a long way.
Yeah, I think that's really, really powerful. I think any kind of abuse, from what I've experienced, right, is any kind of abuse basically erodes your sense of trust in yourself. It erodes your confidence, and it does erode your sense of safety. So learning all that is very key. And I know firsthand that experience that you're talking about, like, oh my God, I'm going to run out of money. I'm so scared I don't have enough money. And then just having to remind yourself, although when I was doing this exercise, it was really more like I didn't have any money to buy food. And I was sleeping on friends' couches. So like there was literally no food, no anything. But I had to just like find something that, oh, I'm safe, I'm with a friend, I am held. So at least that's something, you know? So
Yeah,
sometimes
it is
it's just
hard. No,
rough.
that, I mean, yeah, I mean, you lived that life, right? And then no wonder that you became the woman that wants to talk about money and how, you know what I mean, how you can find the power in it because you lived this experience, right? And I feel like our journey is to live the experience that we're meant to come and burden the world, right? That's our purpose. Okay, I came from this really, really hard spot, but now I can show you how to come here because I've done it. I've taken the journey, right? I've done this. And I think that's the power in it, right? Is being able to see yourself go from that to this. And that's just a beautiful thing.
It is. I feel very, very grateful that I could do this work, right? So I want to just switch gears because you did talk about being in a cult, and I know that some of the work you do is also around religious trauma. So I wanted to ask you, how do you define religious trauma, and how have you seen? Yeah, let's just start with that. How do you define religious trauma? Let me not do my usual pack three questions into one.
No, that's a great question, honestly. You know, I don't know if I've ever been asked that. I feel like religious trauma is something, you know, it's what happened to us that made us feel not in control of our own bodies, right? Made us feel fear, made us feel this sense of, I guess I never am going to be enough, right? And I don't know when I'm going to get that. I feel like religious trauma for myself in particular, and for a lot of people that I work with, is recognizing that what was taken away from them again was autonomy, their ability over, they can make their own choices, they can create their own beliefs, they can find out what they believe and what they don't believe, right? You're taking away people's choice by telling them what they have to believe, what they're supposed to believe. And now I'm not someone that's against religion. I think religion probably serves a purpose for people that need it, right? What I am against is religions that divide people, separate people. And this is particularly what my cult did. My cult, you know, it made the outside world seem as they were all evil. So we were only allowed to stay within our own society. And that's traumatic because as a little girl growing up, I thought all of the kids that I went to school with were bad and they were all going to die at Armageddon.
Mm,
That's what I was told. All these kids are evil, celebrate these holidays, they, you know, they're all gonna die at Armageddon, you're not allowed to associate with them, they're bad. So as a little girl I thought, okay, the only thing that's safe is the society that I live in, which is the cult, right, and my family. Everybody else on the outside is bad and they're evil. And so as a little
mm,
girl, I mean, that's really scary. You know, you're
sure.
thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many people, all these people are, you know, not good, but I'm good, I'm saved, right? Because I'm in the right religion, you know? And so as I started to grow, I started to question things, right? But I became what you would call, you know, I didn't want to be the good girl. The good girl programming just did not fit with me. And so I decided that I was like going to be the rebellious one. That was what my spirit wanted, was to rebel against this good girl programming. And that meant that I was like, I want to do all the things that the other kids are doing at school. I want to date boys. I want to kiss boys. I want to go to parties. I want to go to prom. Like I wanted to do the things that everybody else was doing. I wanted to celebrate birthdays. I wanted to do holiday parties, and I wasn't allowed to do any of those things, right? And so all the guilt and shame that came with not being allowed to like fit in or belong was really difficult for me. And the other piece of this is I decided to have sex before marriage. And that was
Mm,
a big no-no in my religion. That was not okay, right? This is part of purity culture, right? Again, they're taking away our ability to use our being, our body, right, by suppressing our sexuality. And so I ended up being like, nope, fell in love with this boy. I'm gonna have sex before marriage. And I did that, and I was disfellowshipped, is what they called, which means you're outcast from the society and you're allowed to come still to the church, but no one can talk or look at you. So you're ultimately punished. I was punished like that for a whole year when I was 16 years old. And as a young girl, it was extremely traumatizing. I felt so much shame. My dad made me feel so much shame. Like you're a disgrace to this family's name. Like it made him not be able to be hierarchy in the cult, and so he was angry with me. There was just so many dynamics here of that trauma, but ultimately, it was like feeling like, oh, I mean, I had one of the elders, they call me basically a slut because I had had sex before marriage. And I remember that like hitting me so hard because I was like, wow, I guess maybe I am. Maybe I am slutty because I had sex with this boy that I thought I was in love with. Right. And so it's just being able to see that like that way that they controlled me, controlled my body, didn't allow me to even have my own choice was so traumatic for me. I had to work through years of therapy just for that one instance of having to heal from that. And it was wild. But religious trauma overall, I mean, I'm still deconstructing that because I was in that cult for over 35 years. So
Wow.
still deconstructing that programming, so that belief system, right? And moving out of that as I heal.
Whoa.
Yeah, I
Whoa.
know it's a lot, right? I know you're like, wow, I didn't know you had all this story in you. Like,
I think it's very intense. But I know that people that grew up in religion, I'm very lucky I didn't, that's one thing that I didn't have in my past, like deep religious roots. But I have seen this obsession with sex before marriage. I've done, by the time this comes out for the recording, you guys, all the listeners, you guys can listen in on the God Wound podcast that I've been recording. But like a huge part of it has been just talking. I was only at Catholic boarding school for 3 to 4 years. I was like from the age of 7 to the age of 10. So not even a full 4 years, like about 3.5 years max. And so it was a boarding school because South Africa was very much during the apartheid system. I was at the tail end of apartheid, right? You couldn't have people go to the same school. So only schools that where races could mix were the Catholic schools and I think the Anglican schools. So I was in Catholic boarding school. Anyway, I remember the nuns really, and we funny enough, we were taught by American nuns. I remember the nuns preaching continuously about money being the root of all evil, sex being the root of all evil. Like sex was a big no-no. We were kids. They were like the boarding school was just for kids from grade 7 and under. And yet boys and girls were kept so far apart. Like from the age of 7, you just know you cannot look at each other, you can't talk to each other. And it's so interesting as I'm doing the work around the God wound, which is not religious trauma work, really. It's just about understanding my relationship with divinity. That stuff is coming up, and I'm like, whoa, the stuff around shame and sex and what was taught. I'm like, they had no business teaching us that. Like, I was like a little child. I hadn't even yet turned 10. What was
yeah.
I going to do? What did they imagine was going to happen? You know?
You didn't even get to
So,
have a healthy relationship dynamic between children, right? That's wild.
no, not at all. So, there's definitely a lot around that I can resonate. And luckily, it didn't go so deep. But what I wanted to say before I got sidetracked was one of the things I mentioned in my current book is how if you want to punish a person, The reason why isolation in prisons is so effective, and most prisons around the world have started to make it illegal. It is so effective because humans are like creatures of community. So when you isolate a person and they do what they did to you, it is one of the biggest traumas. I experienced something similar, but only for like a few days at one of my own retreats that I hosted in 2022. And it was so deeply, deeply traumatic to me. You know, like it's taken me like most of 2023 to heal from that. So I can only imagine what a whole year of that must have done. It's deeply, deeply traumatic. And I also want to just go deeper into this, right? So how have you seen when people are going through this, especially when they lose autonomy to the body? This also ties to the womb. And I think it's so important for us to understand this as women. How have you seen that also impact our finances? So maybe you're not going through financial abuse in your household, but you're going through something similar like religious abuse, and you're also losing autonomy to the body. You can't say yes, no. Don't have any control of that. How does that start to impact the way we relationship with money, make money, save money, spend money?
Well, when we're not connected to the body, I think that we're dissociated from life. I think I lived the majority of my life. Actually, I know I lived the majority of my life disassociated and not having that connection to the body. So it was like I was disconnected not only from my body, but from my intuition to, not be able to know, like, okay, what is my relationship to myself, to my body? So how could I even have a relationship with money? Like I couldn't even have the cognitive executive function to ability to say, oh, would be the smart thing for me to do, decision. It was, I couldn't make those decisions because I was so disconnected, right? And I think that's the part of this is that when we lived most of our life in our head and not connected to the body or higher wisdom or intuition, we are surviving. That's it. We're just surviving. We don't have the ability to thrive. We don't have the ability to make really smart decisions with money or make smart decisions for, okay, what's our next step in life or finding, what gives us purpose. We're just trying to get through the next day. We're not able to really know what's going on inside. We are literally completely in survival mode and we're stuck in that part of our brain that doesn't even have the ability to have that type of access to rational thinking, if that makes sense. We're really stuck in the reptilian brain, right? Where we're in that habit or the habit brain, some people call it, where we're just doing the thing that we do every day, and then we're not going anywhere. We're in the same place as we were last year, as we are this year, and nothing has changed because we haven't been able to have access to have the frontal lobe, right? That conscious awareness of, okay, well, what's the pattern here? What do I need to shift? What do I need to change? Right? We can't make those decisions. And so that's why it's so important, I think, to first start with, again, the foundation, getting connected to your body, to your system, to finding security within self, to even recognize something must not be right here. How do I go on this discovery journey to find what's not right so that I can thrive? And so many people are, I think, more and more disconnected, right? We have so many distractions. We have social media. We have things bombarding us 24/7, right? And we've even lost that connection, I feel like, even more. And we have to learn how to get that back.
I agree with that. So is there a particular exercise that you create for women to help them reconnect with their bodies? Because as I'm listening to this, one of the things that I'm also hearing is, apart from just losing trust and self-esteem to self, is that financial abuse and religious abuse, they have a similar tie in that it's almost like they have to disconnect you from being in your body, from being in your power. And as we know, women, our greatest power comes from our womb.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What is
That's
the
the reason why they can't.
that a woman can do?
I'm sorry, say that question again. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. What is the first exercise that a woman that finds herself in this situation, in any of these abusive situations, really, what is the one exercise that she can do to try and reclaim her body, to reclaim control of herself and her autonomy?
So I will say that the thing that helped me the most, because I had extreme anxiety, complex PTSD, and I struggled with one, being present. And if you don't even know what being present means, then that's your first clue. That's your first red flag. Because my therapist looked at me and she goes, well, you need to be present. And I was like, what? Like she'd explain it to me and I looked at her like she was crazy. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, and I literally was like, have no concept of what that means, right? My thing, I think the biggest gift that I ever gave to myself, and I listened to the call, and I always tell women, like, you're always kind of being shown what you need. Okay. Like you're going to get little gifts and your intuition's going to drop in. You're going to like things are going to keep showing up in your awareness. And you're like, what the hell is this? But you might keep ignoring it. Right. And for me, it was meditation. I had people that kept talking about meditation. And I was like, why do people keep talking to me about this? Right. And so finally I kind of ignored it. And then I had a client come to me, and I used to be in the beauty industry. So I had a woman that I worked with, and she said to me, you should try transcendental meditation. And I was like, what? What the hell is that? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you know what? It led me to be curious enough to say, you know what? This has come into my awareness so many times. Like, I'm not going to ignore it this time. I'm going to go and be curious. And so I went and learned from a spirituality teacher that teaches transcendental meditation, so against anything that I normally would have done. But I was like, I'm going to listen to my gut here. I'm going to go and do this. And that was the biggest gateway for me to my healing, meditation. Because even though it was a struggle and it was really hard for me to sit still, the more that I did it, the more I started to connect to my body, because I actually was able to slow down. I was actually being able to get comfortable with sitting with myself rather than keeping myself busy, running a mile a minute. My trauma response was fight or flight. So you would see me, I would always be busy. If I wasn't busy, I was keeping myself busy. It was hard to get me to sit still, right? Like, and then I would crash and like just be like Netflix binge for days, because finally my body would just be like, we can't do this anymore. But I was recognizing that I was so disconnected from myself, and this is the reason why this is continuing to happen to me. And so I feel like meditation, coming into your body, slowing down and just not doing anything, like, is how you can start to connect to your body. You can start to connect to the sensations. You can start to connect to the messages that you receive in meditation, right? Maybe you're going to start to tap into those type of things. That is the key, right? And for some women, they're going to say, you know what got me was yoga, right? Just slow movement, right? Slow movement, connecting to the body. Okay, what's the body feeling like? Where's my pain? Where's the trauma being held, right? I remember the first yoga class I ever went to in my healing journey, I was shedding tears. I was bawling. I had no reason why. It was whatever the yoga pose was. There must have been something energetically trapped there. And I was bawling. And the more that you just recognize that you connect with that body, your body has been suppressing and holding everything in so tightly for you. And once you finally start to listen to what the body needs, and the body's like, oh my gosh, finally, I can release all of this. Like, thank you. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you're just got to realize that there is this beautiful body mind connection, and you need to be able to create that for yourself. Because that's where your power lies. Your power lies in being so deeply connected to yourself that you know your next step. You know money. You know where you're going next, right? Like, and everything now starts to be more attracted to you because you're energetically just so a clear channel for it, truly.
No, I resonate.
Yeah.
I've talked a lot about how actually your journey is very similar to mine in that, like, when I started my healing journey, I chose Vipassana though, but I started with literal Buddhism. I searched, but Vipassana, once I found Vipassana, it was like home. I found home, and yeah, yoga is still a big part of my journey. So yes, yes, yes. I agree with that. I love that. And as you're talking, I was just thinking, one of the things that you're saying is like, we'll hear those nudges about what is the next step. So many people that come on my podcast or follow me will send me long, long messages and emails about the struggle and the guilt of moving away from really deeply religious households to go on this spiritual journey. I'm just wondering, how did you do it? For anyone listening, like, did you experience the guilt as well? Did you struggle with it, and how did you maneuver it?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely did. I left when I was 35. I'm 42 now. And I didn't know if it was the right thing. It was actually my ex-husband that told me. He's like, this whole thing is a sham. He started to show me things, and I started to learn more about it. Um, and that was really hard because I was like, he was going through a belief system that had been all I'd ever known. And it was hard for me to believe him at first. But the more that I allowed curiosity to kind of lead me, I started to say, you know what? This doesn't resonate with me anymore. And I wanted to almost stay. There was times where, I mean, there was so many times where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay. I'll marry back in the religion. That way I get to keep my family, I get to keep my community, and I get to keep my friends. Because I knew when I left that community, I lost everyone. And that was really, there was a lot of fear, right? And in a lot of religions, you don't have to do that, right? You can leave, being a Catholic and you're still accepted, right? Like you can leave in some of the, you have the ability of choice in some of these other religions. That is not the way it is for the religion I grew up in. And so when I took that really big leap to say, you know what? I can't fake something that's not authentic to me anymore. I don't believe it. There's just too many missing factors. There's too many unknowns here that just are not adding up. And it's scary. So to those people that if you are going on that journey and you're like questioning your whole entire belief system that you were indoctrinated with because it was just a generational thing, right? My parents, they were a part of it. So of course they were a part of it, right? Like I was just the one to break the cycle. I was the one to say, this is not for me. And go against the grain, but it was not easy. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. It was really hard. There was a lot of grief that came with that. But I think this is about the journey of you. And I learned it's like, well, it also started to feel like a treasure hunt, right? Okay, well, what if this doesn't resonate with me, then what does resonate with me? And just like you said, I started like Buddhism, like, all of these other things. I started looking to Buddhism, Taoism, like I started looking at other religions. I started to be curious. I still am on that journey. I still want to learn more, right? I just learned that there's a hidden gospel of Mary Magdalene. And I was like, oh, I want to read that. Like, I'm curious. I want to know all the things that have been hidden because it didn't add up to the religious doctrine that the world wanted to create, right? I want to know what is the hidden knowledge that has been hidden for a reason, right? Because it didn't stack up to what, how they could control the masses, basically. So I think it's about saying, you know what, you get to be curious. And even if it's scary, take that leap. Trust that nudge that says something doesn't feel good to me. I don't feel in alignment with this anymore, or I don't want to do this thing anymore. And then go and do it. Just go and do it. It might be a little bit scary in the first process, but then you're going to start to be like, okay, this is kind of fun. I'm figuring out what feels good to me.
Mm.
Taking back your power.
That's so beautiful advice. I do have, sorry, I'm just going to go a little bit deeper into this because I find this to be such a very fascinating topic when people message me. I do get a lot of emails about it. So being able to talk to someone about this is really, really, I feel, going to help people listening to this. Um, so how did you deal with losing? Because I mean, if you are losing that community, that family, because you're leaving what you were born into, how did you deal with it? Like, what are some resources? How do you go through the day? You've just left all you know behind.
So I did kind of a doozy. I left my marriage and the cult at the same time. So there was a period of time where I actually thought I might end up in a mental hospital because I was so depressed. Not that it was just, I didn't, there was times where I questioned, do I even want to exist anymore? Right? Because it was like, if I'm losing all of this, what am I living for? Right? And I truly believe my children saved me, my two boys. Right. I realized that, and I think honestly, sometimes I wonder if I wouldn't have had them, if I wouldn't have had a reason to be here, would I still be here? I don't know, right? I'll never know that question, but I know that they were the thing that made me get up out of bed. They were the thing that made me say, okay, how can I show them a different life? How can I show them what it's like? You can come from this extreme adversity and become resilient and move through these things and have great strength. And so that became my mission. My mission became in life to show them that there was more. And I went on that discovery for myself and for them because I wanted them to know that they were loved and everything was going to be okay, because being abandoned by my own parents, leaving that religion, I didn't want to abandon them. I was like, I would never do what was done to me. And so I think that's the biggest piece. And I think support, finding support. I began to just say, okay, I'm going to have to go to therapy. I need a coach. I need a therapist. I need people that are going to like be able to help me kind of guide me through this process because I was so lost, right? You can feel really lost. And I don't think that you can do it alone. You just can't. And why would you want to? Just like you said earlier, right? We thrive in community. We are human beings that thrive off of connection. We need it. Is one of our biggest human needs is that connection. And I think being able to find the safe spaces that make you feel safe to be yourself, to be your authentic self and your own honesty. And that is when we begin to really thrive. That is, it's just being seen in our sadness or despair and someone else being able to witness that and be there for us, right? It makes us feel like, oh my gosh, there is something good about humanity. I can move through this, right? And that's what I want people to know. Like if you're leaving a religious community like that, know that there is so much support out there because you're not the only one doing it. There's hundreds and thousands of people doing it. I see all the time. I see people come to me and say, I left a community and I'm feeling lost and I don't know how to, navigate these things. And that's the reason why, right? We're able to help these people move through it and grow stronger.
Mm.
I hope that answered your question.
It does. I'm a big believer in support. I rave about how self-discipline has never been the reason for me doing a lot of things. The reason why I've been able to write books, to travel, to do the things that I've been able to do has been because of support more than self-discipline. People will be like, oh, how do you get self-discipline when you write a book? Well, when you write a book, you've got publishers, you've got editors, you've got people to bounce ideas off of that will tell you. You've got publicists, you've got PR people. That's what the publishing houses bring. Well, because I'm published with Penn Macmillan, and before that it was Jacana Media. But I'm like, they bring all of that. And it makes a huge difference. You're meeting with all these people consistently, and it becomes a life-changing experience. So I don't, yes, I write in isolation for like weeks, but that I've got so much support behind me, people checking in, making sure it's going well, giving feedback, wondering if it's doing well, all of that. You need it to do anything amazing. I feel like I will choose support over self-discipline any day, guys. Always, always, always. Because support does actually lead, with enough support, you can get some semblance of self-discipline, discipline enough to be able to sit and do a thing because you are being supported and an environment is created to allow you to do that thing. So sometimes what we need more than anything is support and community. So yeah, I have,
held for you.
pardon?
You need a container so that you're held, right? Otherwise, we do feel like we're flailing, right? We feel like we're kind of drowning out on our own. And it's so important to be able to have that, you know, and I still do, right? Like here I am 8 years later on my healing journey. I still have my therapist. I still have my coaches, right? I think it really helps me navigate from coming from such a struggle in the past to make sure that I'm staying on track, right? I don't feel like we'll ever not need that support. I think it's such a great, beautiful relationship that you can create.
I agree. I feel the exact same way. I just feel like just today I messaged one of my coaches. I was like, hey, I want you back in my fold. I'm re-signing with you again because I need that. It makes such a difference. I think we live in a society where we've been sold the myth of the individual, like being able to do it alone, being so disciplined, 5 a.m. club, and really doesn't work. And I think more than anything for women, if you're a mom with kids, how? You still have to look after your womb, you have to look after your kids, you have to look after the household. Get the support. Get the support. It makes a huge difference. I've seen the huge difference that it's made for me just being a writer and just being an entrepreneur, being a podcaster. Huge, massive difference. So, Brooke, I have to ask, unfortunately, our time together is coming to an end, but I would love to ask my second last question is, what have been some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned through your journey of healing from financial and religious abuse?
I think the first and foremost one is being an advocate and standing in my power for myself, right? And then I think the next one would be allowing all the grief over the loss of community, family. My ex-husband passed in 2020, right? Having like this deep grief and watching my children grieve for all of these things, right, that we kind of lost together, has helped me see the resiliency of the human spirit. That we can go through really deep pain and suffering and loss, but we also can hold great joy and love and beauty and abundance in our heart as well. It's like we can have both of these things and move through them. And there's always, I feel like, just such a gift in the pain and the suffering. And we can choose to see from that perspective instead of saying, oh my God, I'm the victim of life. Life is here to screw me over, right? And instead of we can kind of shift that mindset, we can say, okay, what has this given me as a gift? What did I learn? What gold can I take from this? And we can choose that route. I think that's when we learn the lesson much quicker. And we just begin to live more happy, more joyous, because we're able to hold both and not feel like the victim. We're able to just feel like, okay, this gave me something. I'm seeing the gift in it. I'm holding it. And now I have this wisdom to keep moving forward on my journey.
That's really, really beautiful advice and beautiful lessons, actually. My last question, and I'm sure people are already Googling for your name, but how do people work with you? How do they follow you? Where do they get to know more about you and the work that you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on obviously all the social media networks, TikTok, or Instagram, Life Coaching Goddess. And then my website is simple. It's lifecoachinggoddess.com. So they can reach out to me there. They can set up a consultation if they're interested or if they want to know more about how the work I do. It's really about healing from this trauma from the past so that you can move forward and thrive in your life now and really be in your own power, in your feminine energy, really being able to navigate your life in a way that you actually want. So you can design your life. You're the creator of it. And I want to show you the power that you have.
I love this so much. Thank you so much, Brooke. This has been so enlightening. I feel like I learned a lot, and I know many people listening have learned a lot as well. So, also, thank you so much, Money Magicians, for tuning in, listening, or watching. If you enjoyed this podcast and you know there's someone that you think may be going through financial abuse and may benefit from this podcast, or just some kind of abusive relationship, and you think that this podcast could be helping them, or you just want them to learn about ancestral money trauma, please do share the episode, share the podcast with them, send to family and friends. Leave us comments on YouTube. It helps with other people discovering the YouTube videos. And also leave us a review on iTunes and Spotify. It also just helps, again, when I'm reaching out to people to be on the podcast, to come through on the podcast, to want to say yes and to openly share. So we all learn more. So thank you so much, Money Magicians. And if you enjoyed this and you want to do more work around healing ancestral money trauma, I do have resources for you at the bottom in the description of this video. Check out our free 7-day tapping into ancestral money wisdom training. And also, if you want to work with me for coaching one-on-one, or sign up for any of the Money Magic, sign up for the Money Magic course, which is what this podcast is based off of, then definitely check out the links in the description. Just shoot me an email or DM me. Until next time, have a fantastic day further. Cheers.